we thought a good starting point would just be last case that I treated this afternoon.
Yeah, Friday night fun.
Absolutely. And I've started on the wrong slide. Should we go back?
Yeah. I thought this was the ideal way to start the adventure, the podcast, and we didn't know how to start it, so I thought get the clapper out and start this first adventure with the podcast. And it's nice to try it, get the ball rolling.
And a totally unnecessary purchase as well, but why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here for Friday night, a bit of Friday night fun.
Yeah, exactly. And we thought we were sat here, Luke and I were saying, well, why don't we just do this? And we weren't quite sure what we're going to do for the first podcast, so we've just decided to pick the last case that I treated this afternoon, basically. And it was this lower right 6 you see up on screen. We thought we'd just talk through the case and perhaps share some ideas about the file system that we used and why we use it and where we've gone with that journey. So
I think it's a great case to actually start off. It really allows us to talk about the case, the clinical scenario, but also the evolution of the instrumentation. I think it's been 18 months, 2 years now that we've changed things a bit.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, the file system we used here on this particular case we first got our hands on to use on a clinical case.
There's a bit of a story there.
October 2018 we did our first case with this, I think. But we saw it a bit before that, didn't we?
Yeah, we sort of forced our way into a room full of people having a meeting about this secret prototype, and we just sat down at lunchtime, and Denspeler Sirona, Sarah Wallman was very kindly gave us 2 prototypes, and incidentally we picked the same ones. You clearly copied me because,
of course,
and it was a file that was spinning at 500 RPM, which was different to what we were used to. Really much softer metal, and that was end of 2017. Then we had a case in 2018, and then all of a sudden it became what we now know as Trinatomy. And it's now a year and a half that we've been using it. I think this case really gives us a way to talk about it.
Yeah, well, it totally does, because everyone can see it's a heavily restored lower right first molar tooth, and we've also got very long roots. I think obviously most of our cases, and we can talk about that at other times, but most of our cases are assessed with cone beam CT. So this is fully assessed with cone beam, and the measurements were somewhere in the region of 25, 26 millimetres for this.
Just what you want on a Friday afternoon.
And you could see on the cone beam as well, the mesial-buccal and mesial-lingual, they're quite splayed apart. So, and the mesial-buccal in particular was quite calcified and receded. So on a case like this, we're mindful that we've got a complex root canal system to negotiate. And also, we don't really want to rip the tooth open in the pericervical area. So Luke and I talk about this quite a lot. The maintaining the dentine in the PCD, and it's quite important, isn't it, to us?
Yeah, I think it's what we sort of. It's a bit of a buzz word or concept nowadays, but it's not new. I know Kishan talked about probably use Endo topics almost 10 years ago. So it's that 4 millimeters above and below the CEJ, and it confers rigidity to the tooth. And there's lots of good files, but we're just moving towards files that try and remove as little as possible in that corona and the orifice of the tooth. And I think Trinatomy works really well for us in our hands. When you have cases like this one in particular, when they're really, really long, it means the file is working along the whole shank. So I think that's why we put this up, and we thought this is a great case to reinforce what we've been thinking about over the last year. So let us show you the files, because I think they're a little bit different to what we used, and it's probably the only system in the UK certainly that we have access to that is this conservative, or is this?
Not necessarily, but I think it's the only system that's out there which has got variable taper in such a fashion. And I think that's what's great about it, in the fact that you've got variable taper, which means the file changes along its length, so it's easier to control, isn't it, basically? And before we go on to the files, I think everyone needs to see the post-op video, because
the glory shot.
I think,
you know what? we love the black and white pictures, and we Endo don't just live and die on these black and white lines. But before you get to this, I think there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on, and we genuinely think that anybody can achieve this with the right tools. I think it's really interesting to break this down. And what we get attracted to this is the skinniness up at the top, I think, coronally.
Yeah, and it comes into that preservation conversation, and we'll look at the files themselves. And as we said, first case 2018. Again, just look at the image there on the screen. That lateral incisor, again, it's super calcified, and typically with traditional instruments, those that are a bit bigger, you would be losing quite a lot of that tooth structure coronally, and this just provides that much kind of skinnier prep, really. And it's kind of five files, isn't it? So why don't you run through them?
I think that the standard approach is to have what I call the shorty, the purple, the orifice modifier. So you have what is reminiscing of an SX or an XA, so those orifice modifiers or orifice openers. It's this newly treated metal, so it's really soft, really bendy, really easy to get into difficult access patients, which is pretty much everyone we have. So any upper molars or lower molars. And that is really, you can see that it's just those, it's very short, so it's 16 millimeters. And it's working only on a very short. It's about 8 millimeters of working flutes, and you really have to sink all of that to try and get the orifice enlargement. And it's only a 0.8 in diameter. So the big files, to give you an example, this is the bigger file in the family, the orifice modifier. It's 0.8 millimeters. What is an F2? It's 1.2?
1.2, yeah. Most of the stuff out there is 1.2. Some are down 1.03
or 5. So you're ranging from 105 to 112, whereas this is 0.8. So everything's shifted to the small. So you've got the shorty, the purple. Then you go on to the glider. So it's a white banded, really nice. I really like it. Really soft. And then you progress the small, the yellow, and then the prime, which is the red, and then the green, which is the medium. Okay, and those are the familiar colors, the familiar progress through files: white, yellow, red, and green. They mimic the ISO sizes, so white 15, yellow 20, and red 25, and green 35. The quite interesting thing about the shank of these instruments is that it's shorter. It means that you have a better access and you still have a long file working. I think that's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, even it's not a massive difference, but even compared to some of the newer files which have an 11 millimeter shank, that 1.5 mils is a big difference. And then we were using some other files the other day, just trying some, weren't we, that had the 13 millimeter, the traditional ones, and it's a stark difference when you look at them. And I mean, as Luke was saying, they come in this basic order: the modifier, the glider, and the shaper, and that modifier is really key, isn't it? It's actually it's a really nice opening film.
It works really well. It's easy, it's soft, it's really safe, and then you really need to use it to get that enlargement at the orifice so that everything flows down. The glider is a really nice file. Again, I think the beauty of the variable taper in these files, and that is what sets them apart, the variable taper throughout. The beauty of it is that they really don't have a dragging sensation. You always need finger rest for files and for prepping and all that. This is probably one of the systems where you can do without a finger rest, or if you forget, or if it's a really difficult access, you're not dragged in. You have really, really ultimate control on it. I think that is what's been setting it apart. And the glider, it's a centered parallelogram, so it probably is a bit reminiscent of the Protaper Next family.
Okay, it is.
And then you move on to the shapers, so the yellow, red, and green. And again, all the usual sizes, 21, 25, 31. But this is again an off-centered parallelogram. Again, remember that Pro-Taper Next swagger. And certainly with the red, I can see that it's got that slight snaking effect.
Yeah, and you can hear it as well when you're using it. It's got that sort of grating sound that you hear on the side of the root canal. I always warn the patients you're going to hear a little bit of a scratching sound as we prepare, and it's hugely beneficial that, because as you say, it gives you that control, and as a user of the file, as a clinician, you're not being sucked in like you were on so many of the file systems of the past, particularly the fixed taper systems.
For sure, the fixed taper systems will bind more of the canal, so there's no two ways about it. This is why, as you said earlier, it's the uniqueness is the variable taper, and you can actually feel the difference with it in this case.
Yeah, totally. If you want to geek out, we love geeking out, looking at file slides like this. So
why would you be here?
Exactly. So at the moment we've got 3 shaping files in the system: the small, prime, and medium. And they're not quite ISO sizes, because they're 26 and 36 in terms of the prime and the medium. It's probably just a manufacturing or a patent sort of setup, really, isn't it? But the key thing for us is that you can prep apically, but you preserve coronally. And there's a lot of conversation around deep shape and preparation and creating that framework apically to allow you to irrigate exchange, create a nice box for obturation, because it does make life easier. But it's at the sacrifice always of coronal denting.
I think this is why we geek out on this, and it's, if you look at D16, which is 16 millimeters back from the tip, they're all 0.80, so you can prep bigger apically and still you're not prepping coronally. And I think that is the key, that ultimately. So if you like the deep shape, the box prep, you can still achieve that, but you're not at the detriment of taking more coronally, and you actually have the ultimate control apically to just seat it.
And you see it here, because again, I think traditionally, if I what should we use? Let's say Pro-Taper Gold, for example, as something that many of you will know and understand, because that's what gets taught at universities, where you step through S1, F2, F1, F2. You will definitely prep more coronally, because you have to brush them. They're wider, and you have to brush them. Whereas, this certainly, you have got that ability to prep up. So these were prepped up to the prime apically, so to 25. I would struggle to take an F2 down there.
Well, recently we've actually gone to even prep these to a medium. So size 35, very Scandi.
Absolutely.
But it's, I think you can prep to a bigger size, because we've tried it with a 35, and it looks a little bit straighter apically. But it allows for a slightly easier obturation, because it's a bigger shape. But coronally looks exactly the same. It really does. So if you are a little bit concerned about keeping a small shape, because we used to prep things a very small apically, like a size 20, and we just weren't sure. With this file, you can go up to 35 and still get everything that you need there, and maintain everything tidy coronally.
Totally. And actually, remember the call we had with Ove Peters when we spoke to him, and Ove Peters is one of the co-inventors, along with George Brewer, of this file system, and Ove described it as finessing the apex, which I think is what it is, because you're not detrimentally damaging the coronal. And whilst we can really sit here and look at the post-op radiograph, the endo side of things is pretty good. I'm really analytical of all my cases, as you know. The access cavity isn't perfect, but it was a difficult case. It was a calcified pulp chamber, difficult to find, even with a cone beam guiding me here, and I knew that the mesial buccal and mesiolingual were wide apart. I've still removed a little bit more there than I liked, but I think it's still going to do well long term.
For sure. Even for you, I think it's a decent.
Absolutely.
What a way to finish the week.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing this case on.
Pleasure.
And
let's do it again.
Let's see
what happens.
What we'll do is, I think we've got a fair amount of cases in our pocket, and if you have a system or a particular case that you want us to discuss, whether it's a calcified case, a curved, a long, a short, an open apex, drop a comment, drop an email, drop a private message, and we'll sit down and talk about all our failures and some of our successes.
Yeah, sounds good. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, man.